Imagine this. You spend your entire life trying to fit in, striving for approval, shaping yourself according to expectations that are not even your own. You seek validation, fear judgment, and hold on to the idea that your worth is measured by how others perceive you. But what if everything you've been taught about caring too much is actually holding you back? What if the key to true happiness, confidence, and success is not in controlling everything, but in letting go? Epictetus, a Stoic philosopher who lived nearly 2,000 years ago, explored this paradox deeply. Born into slavery around 55 CE in Hierapolis, now in Turkey, he rose to become one of history's most influential thinkers, despite facing circumstances most of us can't imagine. His philosophy serves as a guide to inner freedom, self-acceptance, and the art of living without unnecessary burdens. He challenged the very foundations of what we believe about identity, success, and the pressures of society. And by the end of this journey, you will understand why the moment you stop caring about external validation, everything in your life starts falling into place. Think about it. How much of your stress and frustration comes from trying to meet expectations that don't even belong to you? How often do you hold yourself back because you're afraid of being judged? How much of your energy is spent on worrying about things that, in the grand scheme of life, have little meaning? Epictetus's philosophy reveals a simple, yet powerful truth. The more we let go of external pressures, the more we align with our authentic selves. He believed that life is unpredictable, that perfection is an illusion, and that self-acceptance is the highest form of wisdom. His teachings weren't just philosophical musings. They were born from his extraordinary life journey, from enslaved person to respected teacher, and they've influenced countless people through the centuries, from Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius to modern psychologists who developed cognitive behavioral therapy. Even if you've never heard his name, his ideas have shaped how we understand human psychology and resilience. But here's where most people get it wrong. Not caring doesn't mean being indifferent, lazy, or unmotivated. It doesn't mean withdrawing from life or ignoring responsibilities. It means freeing yourself from the constant need for approval, the fear of rejection, and the exhausting habit of overanalyzing every action. It means living on your own terms, being present in the moment, and understanding that you don't have to prove anything to anyone. Epictetus spent much of his life reflecting on the nature of human behavior. While facing extraordinary challenges, including physical disability from being tortured as a slave, he remained committed to understanding why we suffer and how we can live better. He observed that people are often prisoners of their own minds, caught in endless cycles of worry, self-doubt, and insecurity. He questioned why we allow the opinions of others to shape our decisions, why we cling to control when life is inherently uncertain, why we chase an idea of success that is not even our own. And most importantly, he asked what would happen if we simply stopped caring about these things. The promise of his philosophy is radical, but simple. By focusing only on what we can control and letting go of everything else, we can find freedom even in the most challenging circumstances. And in doing so, we don't just find peace. We paradoxically become more effective in everything we do. At the core of Epictetus's philosophy lies what scholars call the dichotomy of control, a revolutionary way of viewing life that can transform how you approach every situation. In his handbook, The Enchiridion, he writes, "Some things are within our power while others are not. Within our power are opinion, motivation, desire, aversion, and, in a word, whatever is of our own doing. Not within our power are our body, property, reputation, office, and, in a word, whatever is not of our own doing." This simple distinction is the foundation of everything that follows. When you truly understand what is and isn't under your control, you gain the power to focus your energy where it actually matters. Think about how much time you spend worrying about outcomes you can't determine. Other people's opinions, unexpected events, past mistakes, or future uncertainties. According to Epictetus, all of this worry is wasted energy. What is truly up to us? Only our judgments, our intentions, our desires, and our actions. Everything else, how others respond, whether our efforts succeed, what happens in the world around us, is ultimately beyond our control. This doesn't mean we can't influence these things, but we can never completely control them. When we fail to make this distinction, we suffer needlessly. We feel anxious when we can't control the future, angry when others don't behave as we wish, and disappointed when events don't match our expectations. But when we focus only on what we can control, our own choices and responses, we find a freedom that no external circumstance can take away. But wait, doesn't this sound like giving up? Absolutely not. This is where many misunderstand Stoicism. When Epictetus talks about not caring about externals, he doesn't mean becoming passive or indifferent to life. He's talking about a specific kind of detachment, what he called apatheia, not to be confused with apathy. This detachment doesn't mean you stop pursuing goals or caring about others. It means you pursue goals while focusing on excellent action rather than guaranteed results. You love others without trying to control them. You engage fully with life without being attached to specific outcomes. To clarify this subtle but crucial difference, Epictetus introduced the concept of preferred indifference. Things like health, wealth, and reputation that we naturally prefer but shouldn't view as essential to our happiness. He would say it's natural to prefer good health, but a wise person can find inner freedom even when sick. It's reasonable to work for financial security, but a wise person's happiness doesn't depend on wealth. Think of it like this. When you're playing a sport, you play your absolute best to win, putting in every ounce of effort and skill, but once the ball leaves your hand, you have to let go of the outcome. You've done what you could. Now it's beyond your control. This attitude doesn't make you play worse. It often helps you play better because you're not tensing up with anxiety about the results. Central to this approach is what Epictetus called prohairesis, our capacity for moral choice. This, he believed, is the essence of human freedom. No matter your external circumstances, whether enslaved, imprisoned, or facing hardship, your ability to choose how you respond remains yours alone. Epictetus illustrated this with a famous story about his lamp. When his lamp was stolen, rather than becoming upset, he said, "I've lost a lamp, but I haven't lost my ability to endure this event." For him, maintaining inner peace was more valuable than any possession. This points to perhaps the most counterintuitive aspect of his philosophy. The less you care about things beyond your control, the more effective you become at navigating life. We see this paradox everywhere once we start looking. The athlete who stops obsessing about winning often performs better. The public speaker who releases the need for everyone's approval connects more authentically with the audience. The artist who stops worrying about criticism creates more original work. Modern psychology confirms this insight through research on concepts like performance anxiety and flow states. When we're gripped by concern over outcomes, we often perform worse because our attention is divided. But when we focus completely on the process, on the actions within our control, we enter a state of flow where we perform at our best. Epictetus understood this paradox centuries before scientific research confirmed it. The moment you stop trying to control everything is the moment things begin to work out. Not because of some mystical law of attraction, but because you're no longer sabotaging yourself with anxiety and scattered focus. So what happens when you truly embrace this mindset? What changes when you stop chasing approval, worrying about every possible outcome, and allowing fear to dictate your actions? Let's start with relationships, perhaps the area where we most frequently try to control what can't be controlled. Think about how much emotional energy you spend worrying about what others think of you. In our social media age, This anxiety has reached unprecedented levels. We carefully curate our online presence, count likes and followers, and constantly compare ourselves to others. Epictetus would view this as a recipe for misery. He famously said, "When you're offended at anyone's fault, turn to yourself and study your own failings. Then you will forget your anger." His point isn't that you should blame yourself, but rather that focusing on others' opinions is futile. You can't control them, so why let them determine your peace of mind? When you stop needing everyone's approval, your relationships actually improve. You become more authentic, more confident, and ironically, more appealing to others. People are naturally drawn to those who are comfortable in their own skin, who don't constantly seek validation. Epictetus observed that human beings are naturally anxious, constantly overthinking, trying to predict the future, and struggling against the unknown. But what if the key to happiness is not in solving every problem, but in surrendering to the fact that some things are simply out of our control? One of his most powerful lessons is this: the world will never fully understand you, and that is perfectly okay. Think about it. How often do we waste energy trying to explain ourselves, justify our choices, or prove our worth to people who may never truly see us? We hold back our true opinions to avoid conflict. We suppress our real desires to fit in. We constantly look outside of ourselves for validation, when in reality, the only approval that truly matters is our own. Epictetus taught that most of our suffering comes from caring too much about things that do not serve us. He observed how people tie themselves in knots over petty concerns, holding on to grudges, fears, and insecurities that ultimately add no value to their lives. And yet, when you step back, you realize that most of these worries are insignificant in the grand scheme of things. Have you ever noticed that the moment you stop obsessing over a problem, a solution naturally appears? Or that when you stop chasing someone's attention, they suddenly become more interested? This is no coincidence. It is a reflection of a deeper truth. When you let go, life flows. The problem is most people resist this idea. They believe that if they stop caring, they will lose motivation, that letting go means giving up. But this is a misunderstanding. Not caring does not mean apathy. It does not mean laziness. It means shifting your focus to what truly matters and freeing yourself from the weight of unnecessary burdens. Now let's apply this to your work and career. How much anxiety do you feel about your professional status, achievements, or advancement? Many of us define ourselves by our jobs and measure our worth by our professional success. We worry constantly about whether we're doing enough, achieving enough, earning enough. Epictetus would ask, what part of your work is actually under your control? You can control the effort you put in, the skills you develop, the attitude you bring to each task. You cannot control whether your efforts are recognized, whether the market values your skills, or whether circumstances allow your business to succeed. This doesn't mean you should stop striving for professional excellence. Quite the opposite. Epictetus believed strongly in fulfilling one's role with excellence. He said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." His point is that we should focus on performing our roles well rather than on the rewards or recognition that might follow. When you apply this to your work life, something remarkable happens. By focusing solely on what you can control, your effort, integrity, and skill development, you often achieve better results. You're no longer paralyzed by anxiety about outcomes. You don't waste energy on office politics or comparing yourself to colleagues. You simply do your best work, and paradoxically, this often leads to the success you might have chased before. Consider how this applies to adversity and setbacks. Life inevitably brings challenges, health problems, financial difficulties, relationship breakdowns, and countless other hardships. Most people respond either by blaming themselves unnecessarily or by raging against circumstances they can't change. Epictetus offers a different approach. Having suffered tremendous hardship himself, including being crippled when his master broke his leg, he knew about adversity firsthand. Yet he taught that difficulties reveal our character and give us opportunities for growth. In one of his most striking passages, he suggests imagining that God has appointed you to play a role in a play, perhaps the role of a beggar, a person with an illness, or someone facing loss. He says the excellent actor doesn't complain about which role they've been assigned, but plays it as well as they can. This doesn't mean passively accepting injustice or unnecessary suffering. It means distinguishing between what you can and cannot change about your situation, then focusing your energy on what's within your power. Can't change the fact that you lost your job? Focus on how you respond, what skills you develop, and how you approach the next opportunity. Epictetus would encourage you to see every difficulty as a training ground for your character. He famously said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." When you stop fighting against unchangeable circumstances and focus instead on your response, you discover an inner strength that no external event can diminish. This approach to adversity has been so powerful that it became the foundation for modern cognitive behavioral therapy. Psychologists like Albert Ellis and Aaron Beck drew directly from Stoic philosophy in developing treatments for depression and anxiety that have helped millions of people. The mental freedom that comes from this approach is perhaps its greatest benefit. Most of us are constantly at war with reality, wishing things were different, ruminating over past mistakes, or anxiously anticipating future problems. This mental struggle creates what psychologists call cognitive load, leaving us mentally exhausted and unable to focus on what matters. Epictetus taught practices for training the mind to accept reality as it is. He encouraged a discipline of perception, looking at events objectively without adding unnecessary judgments. When something happens, separate the facts from your opinions about those facts. A classic Stoic example. "He insulted me is not a fact. The fact is, he said certain words, and I felt insulted, is your judgment." By practicing this kind of mental discipline, you free yourself from reactive emotions and gain the clarity to respond wisely. Modern mindfulness practices echo this ancient wisdom, and research shows their effectiveness for reducing stress and improving mental health. Imagine walking through the world unshaken by criticism, facing uncertainty without fear, being able to love and appreciate people without feeling the need to control them. This is what happens when you stop caring about the things that do not truly matter. But there is a deeper philosophical layer to Epictetus's teachings that goes beyond practical benefits. It concerns the nature of true freedom. Having been enslaved himself, Epictetus had unique insight into what freedom really means. For him, true freedom was never about external circumstances. He believed that even a person in chains could be free internally, while an emperor could be enslaved by desires and fears. His own life illustrated this paradox. Despite being enslaved, he developed such a powerful philosophy that even the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius would later count himself as a student of Epictetus's ideas. He wrote, "Freedom is not procured by a full enjoyment of what is desired, but by controlling desire." This insight turns our usual understanding of freedom upside down. We typically think freedom means being able to do whatever we want. Epictetus suggests it means not being controlled by wanting things we can't have. This leads to a profound question. What do you think you need to be happy? Social status, a perfect relationship, wealth, physical beauty, career success? Epictetus would say that tying your happiness to any of these external things makes you their slave. True freedom comes from realizing that your well-being depends solely on your own choices and judgments, the only things truly under your control. This perspective is especially powerful when we consider our place in the universe. Epictetus often encouraged his students to take a cosmic perspective on their troubles. He compared life to a banquet where dishes are passed around. You can take what comes to you and enjoy it while it's there, but when it passes on, you don't reach after it or complain. In another metaphor, he likens life to a play assigned by God. Remember that you are an actor in a play, which is as the playwright wants it to be. Short if he wants it short, long if he wants it long. If he wants you to play a beggar, play even this role skillfully, or a cripple, or a public official, or a private citizen. What is yours is to play the assigned role well, but to choose it belongs to someone else. This cosmic perspective helps us contextualize our personal concerns. When we see ourselves as part of a vast universe operating according to natural laws, many of our worries shrink to their proper size. Does it really matter if someone criticized your presentation at work? Does it matter if you didn't get as many likes on your post as you hoped? In the cosmic scale of things, these concerns are insignificant. Yet here's where many misunderstand Stoicism. This cosmic perspective doesn't mean becoming emotionless or passive. Epictetus wasn't advocating for emotional suppression, but for appropriate emotions based on accurate perceptions of reality. He distinguished between destructive emotions, like rage, jealousy, or obsessive desire, and healthy ones, like joy, appropriate caution, and natural affection. Similarly, accepting what we cannot change doesn't mean resigning ourselves to injustice or avoiding action. It means taking effective action based on clear understanding rather than being driven by reactive emotions. Epictetus would encourage us to work for positive change in the world while accepting that the ultimate outcomes are not entirely in our hands. This brings us to what Epictetus considered the highest good: eudaimonia, often translated as flourishing or living well. Unlike modern conceptions of happiness that focus on pleasant feelings or material success, eudaimonia for Stoics meant living virtuously in accordance with nature. Virtue, for Epictetus, wasn't about rigid moralism, but about developing excellence of character, wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. He believed that external success without virtue was empty, while a virtuous person could flourish even in difficult circumstances. This perspective transforms how we view success. Instead of measuring yourself by money, status, or possessions, what if you measured yourself by how wisely you respond to challenges, by how much unnecessary suffering you avoid through clear thinking, by how well you fulfill your responsibilities to others? At this point, you might be wondering if letting go is so powerful. Why don't more people embrace it? Why do so many remain trapped in the endless cycle of anxiety, approval-seeking, and control? The answer is fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of failure. Fear of what might happen if we stop micromanaging every aspect of our lives. Society has conditioned us to believe that if we loosen our grip, everything will fall apart. But the truth is, when you stop caring about the things that don't truly matter, everything falls into place. Epictetus's philosophy is not about recklessness, it is about wisdom. He teaches us that by letting go of unnecessary worries, we gain clarity. By releasing control, we gain freedom. And by embracing uncertainty, we gain a life of deeper meaning and fulfillment. Think about the greatest moments of your life, the moments that truly mattered. Were they planned down to the last detail, or did they happen spontaneously when you least expected them? Some of the most beautiful things in life cannot be forced. Love, inspiration, creativity, and even success. They often come when you stop chasing them, when you create space for them to appear naturally. Consider the artist who no longer worries about whether their work will be accepted by the world, and as a result, creates something truly extraordinary. The entrepreneur who stops fearing failure, takes bold risks, and ends up changing an entire industry. The person who stops searching desperately for love, and in that space of self-acceptance, meets the right person effortlessly. This is the paradox of life. What you hold on to too tightly often slips away, but what you release often comes back to you in greater ways than you imagined. Epictetus's philosophy is particularly relevant in our modern world. We live in an age of unprecedented anxiety, where social media constantly reminds us of what others have that we don't, where economic uncertainty creates constant pressure, where we're bombarded with messages telling us we're not enough. In this context, the ancient wisdom of focusing only on what we can control provides a stable foundation. It's no wonder that Stoicism has experienced a major revival in recent years, with books on the subject becoming bestsellers and Stoic practices being adopted in corporate environments, sports teams, and military training. So how can you begin applying this philosophy to your own life? Epictetus suggested several practical exercises that are as relevant today as they were 2 millennia ago. First, practice the dichotomy of control. Throughout your day, ask yourself, is this within my control or not? If it isn't, remind yourself that worrying about it serves no purpose. As Epictetus said, make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. Second, practice role reflection. Consider the various roles you play in life, perhaps parent, professional, friend, citizen, and focus on fulfilling each role with excellence. Don't worry about whether others appreciate your efforts. Focus only on doing your part well. Third, practice premeditation of adversity. Each morning, briefly consider what challenges you might face in the day ahead. Remind yourself that while you can't control these events, you can control your response to them. This mental preparation helps you respond with wisdom rather than reaction when difficulties arise. Finally, practice seeing events objectively. When something upsets you, pause and ask, what exactly happened? The objective event versus, what am I telling myself about what happened? Your judgment. Often our suffering comes not from the event itself, but from the story we tell about it. The beauty of these practices is that they don't require special circumstances or materials, just attention and consistency. You can begin right now, wherever you are, whatever your situation. Epictetus reminds us that life is not meant to be a struggle. Yes, there will be challenges, setbacks, and uncertainties, but fighting against them, resisting them, and obsessing over them only adds to our suffering. Instead, he encourages us to flow with life, to accept its imperfections, to laugh at its absurdities, and to find joy even in the chaos. Because here is the ultimate realization. You do not need to control everything to be happy. You do not need to prove anything to anyone. You do not need to fear uncertainty, because life itself is uncertain. And that is what makes it beautiful. When you stop caring about external validation, you become truly confident. When you stop fearing failure, you become unstoppable. When you stop trying to control every little detail, you allow space for magic to happen. And that is what Epictetus understood centuries ago. Wisdom is not in trying to conquer life, but in learning to dance with it. As he wrote in the Enchiridion, don't seek for everything to happen as you wish it would, but rather wish that everything happens as it actually will. Then your life will flow well. So as you move forward, ask yourself, what can you let go of today? What unnecessary weight have you been carrying that no longer serves you? And what would your life look like if you simply trusted that things will fall into place? Because the moment you stop caring about the wrong things, the right things find their way to you. And that is the true power of Epictetus's philosophy, a wisdom that has endured for 2,000 years and continues to transform lives today. For in the end, as Epictetus himself said, freedom is secured not by the fulfilling of desires, but by the removal of desire. In letting go, we find what we've been seeking all along.